focus on Francis Fukuyama, American political scientist and international relations scholar, the author of thought-provoking book, The End of History and the Last Man. Now, that title alone is enough to spark some serious curiosity, right? Dr. Kangarloo, welcome.
Thank you very much, Ms. Modiri, for this beautiful and informative program. And I'm glad that you're talking about this very important topic one more time this week.
Thank you so much. Dr. Kangarloo, when I first read the book, I was really intrigued by Fukuyama's ideas about the future of liberal democracies. But then I started to wonder if his predictions might not be exactly on target. What are your thoughts on Fukuyama, his book, and this whole end of history concept? Do you agree with him entirely?
I actually agreed with his original premise. But before I talk about Fukuyama's perspective on liberal democracy, I have to say a few words about people from whom Francis Fukuyama has really drawn a lot of information and a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas, and those people are Karl Marx and Friedrich Hegel. In fact, the end of history, in that book, Fukuyama says that Marx and Hegel both believe that the evolution of human societies wasn't an open-ended process. But according to Marx and Hegel, this was a process that would eventually end when mankind had achieved a form of society that satisfied its deepest and the most fundamental longings. I think here I have to say a few words about evolution, because both Marx and Hegel, they believed in evolution in every aspect of life and every aspect of existence. Something that both Hegel and Marx didn't realize was that exactly what I just said before my opening remark, that evolution is an open-ended process. It's not a closed-ended process. They thought that evolution is a closed-ended process, and based on the evolution of existence of material world, they drew a conclusion on the evolution of history and evolution of society. And that is, we're going to come back to that point later on in our conversations, and we will see what went wrong and why. But if we define history as the ground for competing political philosophies, since the defeat of communism as the main rival of liberal democracies, there's no competition anymore. People can say whatever they want, but there is really communism I should say the competitive ideology was defeated fairly and squarely, and there is really no competitive ideology in the horizon. That means the end of history, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as Francis Fukuyama was concerned in his original book, 1992, End of History and the Last Man. For Hegel, this means the dominance of liberal states. And the end of history means the triumph of liberal democracies, and that there would be no further progress in the development of political philosophies, because liberal democracy has answered all the big questions that human beings are obsessed with, and all the big questions that humans basically live their life to find an answer to those questions. And as a result of that, I think Francis Fukuyama was right originally, but you and I know very well that later on he recanted on his idea. But I know that Fukuyama is a brilliant political scientist, and I agree with his assessment of the battle of ideas and the ground for progress of history. I like the book, and in spite of the fact that he later, as I said, recanted the principal tenets of that history, I continue believing in his original logic.
Yes, that's interesting. Fukuyama's book expands on his essays, The End of History, predicting the fall of communism in 1989, following the fall of the Berlin Wall. Soviet Union collapsed 2 years after, in December 1991. Fukuyama's book, The Last Man, got published in 1992. In his view, liberal democracy, with its emphasis on individual rights and free markets, had proven itself superior to alternatives like fascism and communism. Now, fast forward to the 2000s, the growth of liberal democracies seems to have slowed down. And looking at the latest election result, with a strong performance of populist right-wing and far-right parties in many EU member states, some may argue that liberal democracy has stalled. How do you reconcile this with the end of history idea?
I know there are people who think that this is the end of liberal democracy. Actually, some of my very esteemed colleagues at Columbia think like that, but I beg to disagree. In the end of history, Fukuyama uses the Hegelian idea of history being the theater of battles of ideas. You know, the same way that, when you go to a cinema, when you go to a theater, there is a stage and there are players. He looks at history as the stage, and he looks at the players as the ideas. And the players, even though it looks like they're working together, but they're really, according to him and according to me, they're battling with each other. They're competing for attention. And that's exactly how he sees ideas. Ideas are players on a theater, and that theater is history. That's a brilliant way of putting it. He compares and contrasts the historic jurisdiction of two ideologies, liberalism and communism. And he pronounces communism dead, and that amounts to the triumph of liberalism.
But is communism truly dead?
Yes, that's. I mean, I think it's dead. I think there is no doubt that communism is dead. Communism. Okay, so let's first, before I pronounce it dead, let me tell you what I believe communism is before I pronounce it dead. Communism is a system of government that has a political order, an economic order, and a philosophical order. Its philosophical order is materialism. Its political order is the proletarian dictatorship, and its economic order is socialism. So you see, a lot of people consider socialism to be synonymous with communism. They're not. Socialism is only the economic order of capitalism, the economic system within communism. So communism has yet not returned from death, because while it is dead as a system of government in Russia, in Soviet Union, in Eastern Europe, in China, in Cuba, and in Vietnam, and in Cambodia, and so many communist countries, but it at the outset, at the beginning of the last century, at the beginning of the 20th century, when communism and Karl Marx and Hegel and Engels, they became, the sexiest thinkers and philosophers in the world, their ideas penetrated within America and within European intellectual circles. And that is where things started going south, as Americans say. That is where things started falling apart. There is something today in America and in Europe that I call cultural communism. So it's not a system of economy, it's not a political system, and it's not a philosophical system. It's a culture that has been transferred from the originators and the founding fathers of communism and materialism and socialism, and it trickled down to the American elite and American political system and American academia and European academia. And that is what we see now. I mean, communism, if you want to know what happened to communism, look at Russia, look at China, and look at all the Eastern European countries, Cuba, Vietnam. They have all abandoned, at least they have all abandoned socialism as a system of economy, because they know socialism will only create poverty and through that idea of social justice that all the socialists and communists claim to be advocating, if you cannot produce wealth through your ideas and through your means of social justice, all you're going to do is you will distribute poverty.
How would you define Russia's political system, political philosophy?
So right now, Russia is not a communist country. Its economic system is not socialism. Its economic system is absolutely a hybrid of capitalism and oligarchy. I mean, there is a difference between capitalism and oligarchy. United States is capitalistic countries, England is capitalistic country, France, Germany, and so on. But oligarchy is a system of government that is based on nepotism and a few powerful people, although private ownership is allowed, but a few people are given advantages in the political system, and they're given so much money and so much resources without really being able to compete in the marketplace. The magic of capitalism is really ability to compete, the competition of the ideas in the free market. But Russia doesn't have that. And China, the Chinese are more, they're smarter. They have adopted the capitalistic market-based economy, and under the auspices of the Communist Party, they are allowing somewhat of a controlled capitalism within the marketplace. But even in China, there is no capitalism. I mean, I don't know whether you heard the story that Alibaba is the equivalent of Amazon, and Jack Ma, who was the founder of Alibaba, he built Alibaba to be bigger than Amazon. But one day he gets a phone call from the Communist Party, and he was invited to go to the Communist headquarters, the Communist Party's Chinese Communist Party headquarters. When he goes there, they tell him that when you enter this building, you are the owner of Alibaba. From today, this guy over here, who is a member of the Communist Party, he is the owner of Alibaba, and you have no interest or no share or no property or no control over Alibaba. That is not capitalism.
Okay, that makes sense. But Russia and China, they might not be purely communist anymore, definitely Russia anymore, but they don't seem to be fully embracing liberal democracy. How do you see that? What are their philosophy? You just explained, but how about the triumph of liberal democracy as Fukuyama predicted?
That's a very important question, because Fukuyama and our other friends, John Mearsheimer, and a lot of people who have lost heart over their conviction about capitalism, they fail to see that these competitive and these competing ideas, the competition for liberalism, really doesn't have anything to offer. Everything they have today. China has attained economic superpower status. Russia has revived its military superpower status. And their other allies, Iran and North Korea, each one of them have gained some notoriety in the local neighborhood. But what they don't have, and what our friends don't see, is that magic of liberty, the word liberal in liberal democracy, that in none of these systems, neither in China nor in Russia, human beings are not free to bring their ideas to the marketplace. In fact, what I believe that the magic of liberalism and liberal democracy is that they look at human beings as their main asset. If you look at human beings as your main asset, by that I mean humans are born with tremendous potential, tremendous capability, tremendous hidden skills. But societies in liberal democracies, they create an environment that human beings in that society can convert their hidden potentials into visible skills. This process of converting your potential to your skill is the process that really empowers and enriches the society. If you skip this process, no matter how much you copy from liberalism, no matter how much you copy from capitalism, no matter how much you copy from Western culture, you will not be able to create wealth as fast as liberalism and as capitalism has been able to. And that's where Xi Jinping and Putin go wrong. They think if they copy and paste pieces and parts of the world, the Western world, they would be able to build a competitive model that could eventually defeat capitalism and liberal democracy. But they are dead wrong.
Dr. Kangarloo, let's look at Europe. In Europe, we have an additional force, populist right and far right, who rose in numbers in recent elections. You still believe the dominance of Western liberal democracy is here to stay?
I know that just in the last week's election, a lot of populists and the right-wing parties have gained a lot of votes and acceptance within the European. I mean, you remember that Europe is the seat of liberalism and liberal democracy and enlightenment and modernity and industrial revolution. I mean, America really borrowed these ideas from Europe. So what happened in Europe that suddenly their biggest discovery, their biggest achievement, liberalism, enlightenment, liberty, and the right belonging to human beings, and the disempowerment of God and divinity and the church, what happens that suddenly these people, I mean, you call them right-wing and the populists, but they're really reactionary forces within those societies, are gaining popularity. The reason why they're gaining popularity is because those forces who really represented capitalism and liberal democracy, they really dropped the ball, because they before the time arrives that liberal democracy becomes a global culture, it spreads around the world through its culture, through its values, through its philosophy, through its free acceptance by other societies. These people, the advocates of liberal democracy, mostly the elites in America and in Europe, they really relinquished power to the economic interest groups. They allowed corporations to dictate the mechanism of the spread of democracy around the world. That was a deadly mistake. In 1975, the United States opened to China. I was a teenager back then. And as a teenager, I was thinking to myself, what are Americans doing? Why are they opening to China? And I was saying to myself that I have never seen a sitting empire training and funding and helping its adversary and its competition to defeat itself. I've never ever seen that. It's counterintuitive. It's historically counterintuitive. But the United States did that. They went into China because actually they went into China probably for a good reason, because there were two giants in the world of communism, China and Russia. And the idea, Nixon's idea and Kissinger's idea, was that we are going to divide these two groups, these two giants, and based on the theory of divide and conquer, if we divide them, then we can defeat them one by one. They defeated Russia and Soviet Union. They were right on that account. But the expense and the cost of defeating the Soviet Union was empowering China, which was, they created a problem bigger than the original problem that they were trying to solve by opening to China. So all my friends, all our friends, Fukuyama, Merkheimer, and all Samuel Huntington, and all these people who have lost their heart as a result of the setback in Europe, as a result of setback in the United States, they should think to themselves that this is not a historic event. This is just a little hiccup, a little setback, which is the consequence of a mistake that the West committed in the first place.
Dr. Kangarloo, I want to invite the audience at this part to share their thoughts. Why are the right and far right movements gaining strength in many democracies? Please share your thoughts and comments on social media using hashtag #TrustButVerify, and let's keep the conversation going. back to you, Dr. Kangarloo. You believe that the globalization of Western liberal democracies is an unstoppable force, even with the rise of China and Russia, or the strong performance of right-wing movements in Europe?
First of all, we created China. We created Russia. They are not an independent parameter and factor. They are an appendage to our mistakes. So the same way that we created, the same way that we empowered China, we can disempower China. The same way that we helped Russia, post-Soviet Union Russia, after the Russia of the last 30 years, the same way that we helped them to build their energy industry, the same way we can really pull the plug on their only source of income. Russia is nothing but a giant gas station, a gas pump. They have no product. I mean, if you look around your house, do you own any Russian product? Do you own a Russian cell phone, a Russian TV, a Russian camera, a Russian... I mean, nobody in the world... Russians cannot produce products that are acceptable or competitive in the world. And the name of the game in the future is to look at the products around your house and see which country, in the back of the products you buy, is written made in what? Made in Vietnam, made in Bangladesh, made in China, or made in Russia. China, on the other hand, based on this idea, China has a lot to say. But even in the case of China, we have a lot of control in really turning the clock back on China.
That's fascinating perspective. What are your final thoughts on Fukuyama's end of history as a conclusion to this conversation, Dr. Kangarloo?
I think Fukuyama was right in his initial idea, in his original idea of the end of history and the last man. I think his analysis as a Hegelian and Marxian, a good student of Marx and Hegel, I think he learned the significance of the evolutionary process in history, but he really didn't do his homework completely right when he started becoming disheartened as a result of the criticism that was leveled against him after the rise of China economically and the rise of Russia militarily, and some problems here and there in the world of Islam, you know, Islamic Republic in Iran really asserting itself in the Middle East, and it looked like Fukuyama's professor Samuel Huntington in his book Clash of Civilizations seemed to be right that after we defeat Soviet Union, the next battle would be the battle between liberal democracy and the world of Islam. But both Huntington and Fukuyama and Mearsheimer failed to see that Islam is not a civilization. Islam has nothing to offer in the competitive ideas of philosophical market. And I mean, I and you probably as someone who has really more familiarity with the world of Islam and the ideas that they're running their societies based on their philosophy and those ideas, we know that they're unable to manage a society, create a society that human beings as the only source, as the major source of creation of wealth and creation of equity in the world, and that is really the magic of liberal democracy. Islam does not consider human being as the core right owner of the rights, and that's exactly why Samuel Huntington and Fukuyama and Mearsheimer should not lose heart. They shouldn't be intimidated by these so-called competitive ideas. There is no competition with liberal democracy as a philosophy of the future of the world.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kangarloo. So, audience, people, lovely people, let's keep the conversation going. This is an important discussion. Share your thoughts and experiences with hashtag #TrustButVerify on social media. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel for more discussions and videos on this topic. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And have a good day until next week. Goodbye.